Hello, my name's Lewis and I'm one of the screen dudes here at Primeline, and we're going to show you how to make your own screen using the screen kits that are sold in the home centers and hardware stores across the country. And I'm going to take you step by step on how to make a screen. It's pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward, and you just need a few basic tools that I'm going to go through and tell you what they are. You need a utility knife, a screwdriver. Some of the screen kits that we sell include the rolling tools with the kits, a pencil, something to mark your frame with, a tape measure, a hacksaw, and a miter box. An inexpensive miter box is fine. An old used bar of soap is going to help lubricate the saw blade to make the saw cuts a little bit easier for you on the screen frame. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through the step process of buying the kit and for the particular kind of application you have. So the next step I'm going to show you, this is the typical screen that may be bent in your house that you need to replace. This particular screen has what we call miter cuts for the corners. The screen kits that we sell are we call a square cut kit, and you don't need to be concerned about making your miter cuts. The square corners make this a pretty easy frame to put together on your own. The only thing that you have to be aware of is that on a miter cut, this is an overall size from one end to the other. And if we were to measure this screen, this one happens to be 18 inches across the top of the screen. And with the square cut corners that are in these kits, you have to allow for the corner distance on the screen frame cut. So there's 3/4 of an inch on each side that you have to deduct, so the overall would be 1.5 inches less than this overall dimension, and that'll get you down to the same net size as the screen frame. So what we're going to do is we're going to take apart the kit, and I'm going to show you how to put this screen frame together. Okay, so we've opened up our kit here, and what's inside the kit is there's actually instructions on the face of the kit. There's detailed instructions inside the kit. The kit includes 4 corners, obviously, for making the screen frame. The spline that we're going to use is already in the frame, and we're actually going to cut the spline and frame together. And in this case here, this is a 36-inch kit, so you could make a screen up to 36 inches by 36 inches. So going back to our sample screen that we're going to make here, we determined this was 18 inches. We're going to allow 1.5 inches for the corners, so this particular screen is going to be 16.5 inches for the cut on the width. And then on the height of the screen, this is 30 inches, so we're going to have a net cut on our screen frame of 28.5. And this is pretty simple. It's just a matter of holding your tape measure at one end and making your mark on the other end. So we'll do our width here first. So we said that we had to have this at 16.5, so we're just going to pencil mark at 16.5. And now I'll show you how we'll show you a couple tips on how to cut this, so it's pretty easy to cut. Okay, so now we're ready to make our first cut here, and here's a little trick to the trade to make it pretty easy. Just need a hacksaw, a fine-tooth hacksaw is fine, old bar of soap, and if you just drag your hacksaw blade across the bar of soap, just gives it a little bit of lubrication when you go to cut your frame. This is just an inexpensive miter box that's available in home centers and hardware stores. And this is the mark that we made for cutting our first cut. And I'm going to line this up, and I'm going to put the spline side right next to the inside corner of the box here. And you hold this firmly down, and you hold it firmly down on your table, and whatever you decide to use. It could be a picnic table for that matter, and this just happens to be a folding table with an old curtain for a shower. For just surface to work off of, but anything's fine. So I'm just going to start with making this cut. I'm going to hold the miter box down firmly, and I'm going to hold the frame down into that corner, and that's going to take light easy strokes, and that's as easy as it gets. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we need 2 of these, one for the top and the bottom of the screen, so we're just going to duplicate this cut. And then we're also going to do the length. So I'll go ahead and I'll measure and cut this, and then I'll show you how we'll put this together. Okay, we've cut our frame to the size that we need for our screen, and we cut the frame, and the spline was already installed, so we're just going to go ahead and remove the spline out of the frame so we can put in our corners. Okay, this is pretty easy to put the corners in, and corners can only go in one way. Easiest way to put these in is just to put this right on the bottom of the inside of the screen frame against the spline channel, and they just push straight in. And we do the short pieces first because it's a lot easier to build the frame with the short pieces and then add the longer pieces. So I'm going to do the other short piece. So now we're ready to put the longer ones together. The same process. Now this last leg is pretty easy to install. It's just going to go in the one side. It's going to go into the other side. And our frame's all built. So we just want to double check our measurements, and we had an 18 by 30, so we're good that way, and we're good this way. So now we're ready for the screening process. So let me get my screen fabric here, and I'll show you a couple techniques to make it pretty easy for anybody to install this screen fabric. Okay, one of the things I forgot to tell you early on, and some tools you may need on hand. It really isn't a tool, but it's a pretty helpful idea to use some duct tape to duct tape this frame down on the table, and it just holds it firmly while you're putting the screen in. So I'm just going to put 4 pieces, and you just lightly put this on the frame and the surface you're going to screen your screen on. So I'll do this on the top and bottom and the sides. That just gives us a nice control over the frame when we're installing the fabric. I've taken the fabric out of the kit. This particular kit is good for making either rescreening a screen door, 36 inches wide, 7 feet tall, or you can get a couple window screens out of this, so the fabric's a little bit more than what we need, but it'll be great for the next screen we need to do. I'm going to start just by overlapping this frame, and you can overlap this frame on both sides a couple inches, and if you just align it here at the bottom of the screen and on the side just a couple inches and just make sure that it's straight, that's really all you really need to do. The kits come with, some of the kits come with rolling tools, and some are sold separately. And we're going to take the spline that we removed out of the frame and now put it back in the frame with the fabric. So we're going to start here at this end, and I'm going to go slow here so you can see what I'm doing. But on this rolling tool, there's actually a concave portion of the rolling tool, and that just helps hold the rolling tool onto the spline so that it doesn't slip off and go into your fabric. So I'm just going to press this spline to get it started, and I'm going to hold the fabric and spline together, and I'm just going to roll this across to the other side. And I'm holding this other side. The frame's pretty well in place on the table, and that's all it takes to get the fabric and spline in on this one end. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top of the screen so I can pull this tension tight at the top and bottom. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start here in this corner, and you just lightly pull the fabric so it's a little taut, and you can start to press it in, and then you just work across the screen. So it's pulling out all those wrinkles that were in there. So now I'm going to go back to this corner. I'll press in my spline. Just going to roll it in. It's easier to take little short strokes than a big long stroke so your rolling tool doesn't slide off. And so we're just about done here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to this side, and I'm going to put that last piece in, and then I'll show you how we'll cut the fabric. Okay, so now I'm going to put the remaining side. And so the next step is just cutting the excess spline off and the fabric. Okay, so now we're at the point of just cutting off the excess spline and the fabric, and you've probably been wondering what I was going to use the screwdriver for. And this is just to tuck that spline in after you cut it on the excess. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all 4 corners where the spline overlapped. And you just push the spline back down into the corners. Okay, so now we're ready to cut off the excess fabric, and this is a little bit of a, not so much a trick or a tool of the trade, but there is a little bit of a knack to this. But if you start with your utility knife and you just bury that blade in the corner against the corner and the fabric and the spline, and you hold the blade almost parallel with the frame and at about a 45, and you just rest the blade right on top of the spline. You keep the blade away from the fabric so you don't cut the fabric. And just go slow. And I'm just resting that blade right on top of the spline. You can see the blade's not coming out into the screen. It's back up against the frame. And when I get to this corner, I'm just going to keep the blade in the corner, and I'm just going to pull the fabric around the corner of the blade. So now I'm going to come around and I'm going to cut the other 2 sides here. I know I make this look easy because I've done quite a few screens, but if you use the same techniques that I'm using, it's like anything. After the first screen, you'll be an expert. Okay, and we'll remove our tape. And there we have our finished screen frame. So it's just like the manufacturer made when it was brand new. And it's easy to say, but it's easy to do. And all the tools and everything that's necessary for the job are in the kits that we sell. And they can be found in hardware stores and home centers across the country.